The stranger arrived at the edge of Miller's Crossing on a Tuesday, in the last hour before dusk. He came in from the east, which meant he had crossed the long stretch of nothing between there and the next town. 11 days of it by his count, though he had stopped counting somewhere around day 5 and was only estimating now. His boots had worn through the left sole 3 days ago. He had torn a piece of canvas from a broken water trough outside a collapsed homestead and wrapped his foot, and the canvas had worked loose by midday, and the dust had come in, and the blister had opened and opened again until there was no skin left on that heel to blister. He walked with a slight limp that had become a full one in the last mile. The town was smaller than he had hoped. One main street, a general store, a saloon with a hanging sign missing 2 letters, a livery with the door ajar, and a boarding house at the far end that showed a yellow light in one window. He stopped in the center of the street and stood there a moment. His hat was not his hat anymore. It held its shape from memory. His shirt had been white once. His trousers had been brown. He did not know what his face looked like, because he had not seen a mirror since he left Fort Worth, and he was not certain he wanted to. He was 43 years old. He had been 32 when he started walking. A dog came out from behind the saloon and sniffed at his boots and walked away again without raising its head. The street was empty except for that. The sun was going down behind him, and his shadow stretched the full length of the road ahead, long and thin and leaning slightly, as though it too had been walking for 11 days and had not yet decided whether to fall down. He looked at the boarding house. He looked at the saloon. He looked at the general store, which had a porch with 2 chairs and a woman sitting in one of them with a cup in her hands. She was watching him, not staring, watching. There was a difference. Staring was the face you made when you wanted something. Watching was what you did when you were measuring whether to offer it. He did not walk toward the saloon. He did not walk toward the general store. He stood in the road with the sun at his back and the dust still settling around his ankles, and he waited. He had learned, somewhere in the last 11 days, that a man who walked into a room uninvited was a man asking to be thrown back out of it. The woman on the porch set her cup on the arm of the chair. She did not stand. She said something to the room behind her that he could not hear. A man appeared in the doorway, hat in hand, and the woman pointed toward the street. The man looked at the stranger. The stranger looked at the man. The stranger had nothing in his hands. He had nothing in his pockets. He had walked 11 days and lost something in every mile of it. And what was left was a body that still moved, and a set of eyes that had not yet learned to look away from other people. The man on the porch said something to the woman. She nodded. Then she stood. She came down the porch steps slowly, which meant she was not in any hurry to reach him and not reluctant to do it. That was the first thing he noticed, the pace of her walking. She wore a dark dress that had been washed enough times to be soft at the elbows. Her hair was pinned back in a way that did not invite comment. She crossed the porch and the 3 steps down and the 10 feet of boardwalk and the patch of dirt between the boardwalk and the street. And when she reached him, she stopped at a distance that was neither close nor far. Professional. She had learned this somewhere. You walked in from the east, she said, not a question. Yes. How far? 11 days. Maybe 12. I lost count. She looked at his boots. She looked at the canvas wrapped around his left foot. She did not look at his face, which he understood was a kindness. There were things written there he did not want anyone to read yet. "I'm Ruth Callahan," she said. "I run the boarding house. The man in the doorway is my brother. He's not staying, he's just passing through." The stranger understood that this was information she was giving him, so he would know what he was walking into. A boarding house run by a woman alone, with a brother who was not there. He understood also that she was not telling him these things because he had asked. "There's a room," she said. "It needs painting. The last boarder left at the end of summer, and I haven't had time to—" She stopped. She looked at his feet again. "It needs painting," she said, "but there's a stove in it, and a bed that doesn't sag." He waited, 25 cents a night, plus your own meals. You can work it off if you don't have it. I need the back porch realigned, the steps loose. Someone's been meaning to fix it for 2 months. You look like a man who knows which end of a hammer to hold. He looked at the boarding house. He looked at the yellow light in the window. "I don't have 25 cents, he said. "I know," she said. "Fix the step first. We'll talk about the rest after." She turned and walked back toward the porch. He stood in the road and watched her go. She did not look back to see if he was following. She knew he would. The brother, tall, gray at the temples, a face that had some of the same bones as hers, stepped aside to let her pass through the doorway. She said something to him, low, and he nodded. Then the stranger reached the porch, and the brother held the door, and he walked through. The room smelled like soap and pine. There was a table and a chair and a stove and a bed, and on the table a basin of water and a towel and a piece of lye soap that was still wet from someone else's hands. "The stove's already lit," Ruth Callahan said from the hallway. "Supper's in an hour. You can eat at the table or eat in your room. Your choice." She closed the door behind her. He stood there for a long time. The water in the basin was warm. The room was warm. The step on the back porch could wait until morning, but he found himself thinking about it anyway. The angle of the nail, whether the joist was cracked or just worked loose, what tools she had in the kitchen. He sat down on the bed. It did not sag. He did not think about the 11 days. He thought about the step. She was a widow. She had been one for 4 years, which was long enough to have stopped saying it out loud, and short enough that she still flinched when she said it inside her own head. Her husband had been a carpenter. The boarding house had been his project. He had built it in the 2nd year of their marriage, adding to it slowly, 1 room at a time, until there were 6 rooms for rent and a sitting room for boarders and a wide porch facing the street that she spent more time on than she needed to. He had died in October. A bad winter, a fall on the ice, a bleed in his head that no one saw until it was too late. She had found him in the morning, still warm, still in the posture of getting up. She had not moved the hammer from his workbench. She had not repainted the room that still needed painting. She had not fixed the back porch step, which he had noticed was loose 3 weeks before he fell, and had meant to fix on a Saturday that never came. She knew what a man looked like when he had been walking too long. She knew what it looked like when the body had started eating itself. Not hunger, which was familiar and manageable, but the slower hunger that came after, when the muscles began to feel like they belonged to someone else, and the feet forgot how to land flat. The stranger had not asked for anything. He had stood in the street and waited, which meant he still had some sense of how the world worked and how little the world owed him. She had watched him measure the saloon and the boarding house and the store, and she had seen him choose none of them. He had chosen to stand there. He had chosen to wait. She had seen enough men come through Miller's Crossing to know the difference between the ones who needed something and the ones who believed they deserved it. This one needed something. He did not believe anything. Her brother, Paul, had arrived that morning from Amarillo with supplies from the general store and a letter from their sister in Denver. He was staying one night before heading back. He had looked at the stranger through the doorway and looked at her and said nothing, which was his way. She told him the man needed a room and a step fixed, and that she would handle it. He said he would load the wagon in the morning and be gone before breakfast. He said nothing else about it. She put the stranger's supper on the table in the hallway. Beans, cornbread, a cup of coffee that had been on the stove since midday. She did not knock on his door. She did not announce it. She set the plate down and walked back toward the kitchen and left him to find it when he was ready. In the kitchen, she washed the dishes from Paul's dinner and dried them and put them back in the cupboard. The soap she used smelled like the soap she had left on the stranger's table. She had not thought about that when she set it out. She thought about it now, standing at the basin, and she dried her hands on the towel and did not let herself think about it further. The step on the back porch was the third one from the bottom. The nail had pulled halfway out, and the wood had begun to split along the grain. She had looked at it that morning and thought about Paul fixing it before he left, and thought about how he would not because she had not asked and he had not offered. She had looked at the step, and she had thought about her husband noticing it 3 weeks before he died, noticing it and saying nothing because he was saving it for a Saturday that was coming. The stranger would fix it. She did not know his name. She had not asked for it. She would learn it when he told her, or she would not learn it at all. In Miller's Crossing, a man could be known by his work before he was known by his words, and the step on the back porch would tell her what she needed to know about him before any introduction could. She blew out the kitchen lamp and went to bed. He ate at the table because the bed felt too soft to sit on and too close to sleep. He was not ready to sleep. He was not certain his body remembered how. The beans were cold by the time he found them. He did not heat them. He ate slowly, which was the only way to eat when the stomach had forgotten what food was. The coffee was hot. The cornbread had been cut into squares, and one of them was softer than the rest, which meant it had been cut from the center of the pan where the edges had not yet dried out. Someone had thought about that. Someone had cut the squares carefully. He finished the plate and set the dishes by the door and sat in the chair and watched the stove. The fire inside it was banked low, coals more than flame, and the room held the heat without pressing it. He had slept in places that were colder than this. He had slept in places that were so cold. The inside of his lungs felt like glass. This was not that. This was a room that had been kept by someone who understood what cold did to a body, and who had chosen, deliberately, not to let it in. He stood and crossed to the window. The glass was clean and the curtains were simple cotton, washed until they were nearly white. Outside he could see the street, the saloon, the dark shape of the general store. A dog walked past, the same dog from earlier, and did not stop. A lantern moved in a window across the street and went dark. He had been walking towards something for 11 days. He had not known what it was when he started. He had not known what it was when he reached Miller's Crossing. He knew only that he had kept putting one foot in front of the other because stopping felt like the thing that would kill him, not the walking. Now he was here. The step needed fixing. He could see the angle of the nail from where he stood, 3 boards and a handrail away. The joist was cracked, not split. He could tell by the way the wood had bent rather than broken. He would need a new nail and a piece of scrap wood to reinforce the old one, and he would need to work in the morning when there was light, and he would need to ask for a hammer if she had one, or borrow one from the livery if she did not. These were small problems. He liked small problems. Large problems had killed his old life and scattered it across 11 days of road. Small problems had edges he could hold. He sat back down. He closed his eyes. He did not sleep, but he rested in a way that he had not rested in months. Not unconscious, not aware, but somewhere between. The room held him. The fire kept. The step outside waited with the patience of broken things. In the morning, he would fix the step. He would eat whatever she put on the table. He would do what he said he would do, and he would do it without announcement. And he would not ask what he owed her beyond the 25 cents he did not have. The stranger slept in the chairs with his hands open on his knees and his breathing slow and even, and the candle she had left on the table burned down to a stub and went out on its own. And outside the town of Miller's Crossing settled into the deep quiet of a Tuesday night, and nothing moved on the street except the wind. He woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of water being poured. The fire had burned to embers, and the room was blue with early light coming through the window. The step outside. He had said he would fix it. He stood and found his boots where he had left them by the door. She was at the stove with her back to him, and she did not turn when he moved. "Coffee's on the table," she said. "I was about to wake you." He sat. The coffee was black and strong, and he drank it without speaking. She brought a plate, eggs, a thick slice of bread, a small dish of preserves. He looked at it and then at her. "Eat," she said. "Then we'll see about that step." He ate. She did not watch him eat. She wiped down the counter, moved a tin of flour, wrung out a cloth, and hung it on its hook. Her hands were steady and economical, and he found himself watching them the way a man watches a fire when he has been cold for a long time. The step was worse than he had thought. The third riser from the bottom had rotted through at the corner where water collected and never dried. He examined it without touching, then went to the small shed behind the house where she said he would find tools. There was a handsaw, a claw hammer with a cracked handle, a plane with a dull blade, and a box of nails sorted by size into empty tobacco tins. He knelt on the step below the broken one and worked for 2 hours. She came to the door once and watched him saw a replacement piece from a plank she had saved in the shed. "Left over from the chicken coop," she said. "Should be the right width." He fit the piece. He nailed it. He tested it with his weight and felt it hold. When he stood, she was still in the doorway, and she looked at the step, and she looked at him, and she did not say thank you. "Come back when you're done," she said. "Dinner's at 6. He returned. She had set a place for him at the table. There was stew and dumplings and a glass of water and a glass of something darker he did not ask about. He sat. She sat across from him. They ate. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that had edges, that fit into the room like a thing placed there on purpose. "You sleep in the chair again tonight," she said. It was not a question. "If that's all right. It's not ideal, but it'll do for now." She took his plate and his glass. He heard the water running in the basin. He sat at the table and looked at the candle on the mantel. The same candle, the same stub of tallow that had burned down the night before. It occurred to him that she had not lit a new one. It occurred to him that she had left the old one where it was. "Supper's through," she said from the basin. "I'll see you in the morning." He understood. He gathered his coat and his hat, and he went back to the chair by the cold hearth. And he sat down, and he did not sleep for a long time. And when he did, he slept with his hands open on his knees, and his breathing slow and even, and the fire did not keep, and the room was cold, and he did not mind. On the third day, he asked if there was work in town. She set down the coffee pot and looked at him. "What kind of work?" "Any kind. You're not obligated to—" "I know I'm not obligated." He said it without sharpness. "I said I had no money. That was true. I didn't say I intended to stay that way." She studied him. Her eyes went to his hands, the knuckles scarred from years of labor, the calluses that had settled into his palms like something permanent. She looked at the way he stood, even, weight distributed, ready. "There's a man at the lumber yard," she said. "Harvey Gresser. He needs help through the winter. Lifting, hauling, dirty work. I can do dirty work. He'll ask questions. Let him ask." She gave him directions. He walked to the lumber yard, and he found Harvey Gresser, a thick man with a gray beard and a broken wagon, and he worked that day and the next and the next. Harvey did not ask questions. Harvey handed him boards and pointed at the pile and said there and there and over there. And when the day ended, Harvey counted out coins into his palm and said same time tomorrow. He returned to the boarding house each evening at 6. He sat at the table. She set his plate down. They ate. The silence between them filled in slowly, the way water fills a crack, not disappearing the silence, but shaping it, wearing it smooth. On the 6th day, she said, "You fix things." He looked up from his plate. The step, the door on the cabinet, that hinge in the hall. She kept her eyes on her food. "You could fix more. There's more broken. There's always more." That night he walked the house, and she did not follow. And he found 3 things: a window latch that would not catch, a floorboard that had come loose at the seam, and the leg of a chair that had been shimmed with folded paper. He fixed them before he slept. In the morning, she noticed the window first. She opened it, closed it, opened it again, and let the latch catch, and said nothing. By the 2nd week, people in town knew his face. The woman at the dry goods counter nodded when he came in. The boy who swept the saloon floor moved out of his way on the boardwalk and said "sir" without being asked. He did not know what to do with this. He had not asked for it. He had asked only for work and a room and the right to sit in a chair by a fire that was not his fire. And now there was something else happening that he could not name and did not try to. One evening he came home to find a second chair beside the hearth. It was not new. The fabric was worn to the weave in the seat, and one arm was darker than the other, where something had been spilled and cleaned. But it was a chair, and it was beside the hearth, and she was already in her chair with her hands in her lap, and she did not look up when he came in. "Saw it at the church sale," she said. 10 cents. He sat down in the chair. The springs were soft, and the arms were the right height, and when he leaned back, the chair took his weight like it had been waiting. "The step's holding," he said. "I noticed." He looked at her. She was looking at the fire. Her hands were still in her lap, and her profile was lit orange by the embers, and he thought, "I could stay here. I could stay here for a long time, and it would be enough." He did not say it. He leaned back in the chair that cost 10 cents, and he watched the fire, and the room held them both. And outside, the wind came up, and the step he had fixed held, and held, and held. The boy arrived on a Wednesday. She had not spoken of children, and he had not asked. He had assumed, and he knew what happened when a man assumed. But the house had no evidence of small things. No marks on the door frame, no toy left on the porch, no Sheng Yin of footsteps above them at night. It was a house of two adults and the particular quiet that arranges itself around people who have learned not to need each other. Then, footsteps on the porch. The door opened without a knock. The boy was 8 or 9. He had dark hair cut short and a coat too large for him, and a look on his face that said he had been sent and was not pleased about it. He stood in the doorway and looked at the stranger in the chair by the fire. "Mama said I have to stay here until she comes back," the boy said. She appeared behind him in the doorway, still in her apron, slightly out of breath. "Mrs. Teller is ill. I need to sit with her this afternoon. He can't come." "I'll go." "No." She said it quickly. Then, slower. "No, you stay. He knows the house." The boy looked at the stranger again. The stranger looked at the boy. "I know where the cups are," the boy said. This was not directed at anyone. He walked to the cabinet and opened it and took down a cup and poured water from the pitcher on the counter and drank. He set the cup down and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and sat on the floor by the fire without invitation. The stranger watched the boy. The boy stared at the flames. "You fixed the step," the boy said. "Yes." "Mama said nobody would fix it. She said she didn't have money for someone to fix it." "I had time." The boy nodded, satisfied with this. He pulled his knees to his chest and rested his chin on them and watched the fire. The stranger returned to watching the fire. The room filled with the particular silence of two people who do not need to speak to each other and know it. She came home near dark. She came in tired and quiet, and she saw her son on the floor by the hearth, and she saw the stranger in the chair beside him, and something moved across her face that the stranger could not read. "Thank you," she said. It was the first time she had said it. The boy did not move. He fixed the step and the window and the chair leg. "I know." He didn't say he was going to. He just did it. She hung her coat on the hook by the door. She stood there with her back to the room. Her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. The stranger saw it and looked away. "Dinner's in an hour," she said. "You should both wash up." She went to the kitchen. The boy stayed on the floor. After a moment, the stranger leaned forward in his chair and rested his elbows on his knees, and the boy looked up at him. "Do you know where the well is?" "Out back." "I know." The boy paused. "You know where everything is now." It was not a question. The stranger looked at the boy, and the boy looked at the stranger. And in the firelight, the boy smiled. A small, private thing, gone as soon as it arrived, and went back to watching the flames. The stranger sat very still. He understood that something had shifted. He did not yet understand what. He would think about it later, in his chair by the cold hearth, when the boy was asleep in the room down the hall, and she had gone to her own room, and the house was quiet. He would think about it, and he would not name it, and that would be enough. The third Sunday he was there, she did not come down for breakfast. He woke in the chair. He had taken to sleeping there more often than not. The chair had shaped itself around him like a thing that remembered, and the house was quiet in a way that was different from the ordinary quiet of early morning. He sat up, he listened. No water running, no movement from the kitchen. He found her on the porch. She was sitting on the step he had fixed, and she had been crying, and she had not tried to hide it. Her face was open and raw in the early light, and she looked up at him when he came to the door, and she did not look away. "It's the day," she said. He knew what day. He did not say so. 4 years, she said. 4 years today. He stood in the doorway. He did not know what to do with his hands. He had never known what to do with other people's grief. It sat in rooms he could not enter, behind doors he could not open. But he stood in the doorway, and he did not leave. "He died on a Sunday," she said, "in the morning, before breakfast, before I could make the coffee." She looked at her hands. "I was going to make coffee. I was going to make it and bring it to him in bed." She stopped. The wind moved her hair. He came down the step he had fixed, and he sat beside her on the porch. Not close. Close enough. "There's a cemetery," she said, "on the hill past the church. I've been every year. I've taken him flowers from the garden. They don't grow anymore. I stopped planting them." He said nothing. "I've sat in that chair every night since you came. I sat there before too, but it was different. Before it was just a chair." She turned to look at him. Her eyes were red and her voice was steady. "You bought a chair. You sat in it. You stayed. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to." She said it firmly, but without sharpness. "That's what I mean." He looked at the step, the wood he had fitted, the nails he had driven. 4 years of her sitting on this porch with her grief and her dead husband's garden, and her son who knew where everything was now. 4 years of Sunday mornings before breakfast. "He would have liked you," she said. "He would have said you were a man who did what he said he would do." She paused. Not many of those left. The stranger did not know what to say. He had never known what to say. He had learned, in his old life, that words were the wrong currency in moments like this, that what mattered was the staying, the sitting, the willingness to be present in a room where you could not fix anything, and could not say the right thing, and could not make it better. So he stayed. He sat on the step beside her, and he did not speak, and the wind came up from the valley, and the step held both of them, and after a long time, she put her hand on the porch beside her own, and she left it there, and he did not reach for it, but he moved his hand so that it was closer, and she did not move away. "Come inside," she said after a while. "I'll make breakfast." She stood. He stood. She went inside and he followed, and the door closed behind them, and the step held the weight of the mourning and the grief and the silence. And the stranger understood, not in words, not in any way he could have explained, that something had changed and could not be unchanged, and that he was not sorry. He was not sorry at all. The kitchen was small and clean and held the particular quiet of a place where someone had lived alone for a long time. She moved to the stove, and he stood in the doorway, and did not know where to put his hands. She cracked eggs into a pan, and he watched the steam rise, and she did not ask him to sit, but she did not ask him to leave either, and so he stayed in the doorway and let the morning be what it was. She set a plate before him without ceremony. He ate without speaking. When he finished, she refilled his coffee without asking, and this small act of knowing that he would want more, that he would stay, settled something between them. Afterward, he washed the dishes without being offered the task. She let him. Neither of them named what was growing in the silence. Neither of them needed to. Later, people would ask how they met. Neither would answer directly. They would speak of weather, of the price of flour, of a broken wheel. The questioner would sense there was a story but would not press, because the story was not theirs to tell. What mattered was simpler. He had walked 11 days. She had opened her door. The step had held them both, and the coffee had been hot, and the morning had come as mornings do without asking permission,